Alright, so we've already discussed roles in Server 2008 R2, but we haven't really discussed features. So normally in Windows, how I was explaining before in the Windows 7 series, you could go to your programs and features, you can see what programs are installed, but you have to go to Windows features, and you can see what different features are installed. Well, Server 2008, it's a little bit different. The features are more part of your server manager. So if you click to this, it would open up your server manager, and it'll take you down here to your features. So right now we have some features installed, but that's because we installed our Active Directory domain services, so I'd have to install a few extra features for things to work. So if we come down here, we see that there is a ton of stuff. Now we're not going to discuss everything here because that'd be, it says there's 41 features, so that'd be, 41 videos or so if you really want to break everything down. It's probably an exaggeration, but anyways, this is where you'd look for, a few more things that might be insecure. Because if you were running just an Active Directory, why would you need Telnet? Why would you need Telnet server? Why would you need a TFTP client? Why would you need SMP or SMTP? You wouldn't need any of this stuff. This is where you have to come and try to decide, what do I need versus what do I not need, what is unnecessary. So I'm gonna uncheck all these. I was just doing that, for example. But what I am going to install is the file services. And the file services isn't actually in this window because it's not a feature. I just wanted to quickly make you aware of this for the start of the video. What we're going to have to do is actually go to our roles and say add a role, go next, and we are going to select our file services. So this is how we set up our shared folders, because oftentimes with an Active Directory you're probably going to want to have shared folders so that users can access network drives. So I'm just going to leave this all default for now, and I'm going to let this install. Usually takes a little bit, but not too long. So our file services were installed, and what we have now, if we come to our administrative tools, is the share and storage management section. So let's wait for that to load, and we have a few different things here. These are our admin share, our C drive share, and our IPC share. All of these are what are called administrative shares or default shares. If it has a $sign beside it, just leave it alone. Don't touch it. Don't right click stop sharing, just leave it there. And netlogon and sysvol are used for Active Directory. So this is what we'll be using later to sort of help get our users login scripts and things of that nature. We'll be talking about that. But for right now, we're not going to discuss that. Let's start a provision share. So let's browse to our users, and let's say in the user, you know what, stop this for now actually. Let's not do that. Let's go my computer, C drive, let's make a new folder, and we'll call it shared. Then let's browse, select our shared folder, say OK. Ntfs permissions. Let's say yes. Let's change our Ntfs permissions. So the creator owner is going to have full control. Our user account is going to have full control. Administrators have full control. And the user account, let's also give him full control. But let's select our let's select our object types. Now, right now, if we want to, we could select computers so that only certain computers could have access to this file. But what we are checking here is to make sure that the users are as a group. So if we type in Joey and say check names, it finds the Joey account we created earlier. But if we were to go to locations, or pardon me, if we were to go to object types and unselect users and then type in Joey and say check names, it's not going to be able to find it. So by saying object types users, we're letting it know that we're searching for that Joey user. So it finds it. I'm going to say OK, but let's give Joey limited access. We're not going to give him full control. We're going to give him read and execute, list folder context, and read, which are the default ones. So I'll say apply and OK. Then it says select each protocol over which users can access this share. Because we didn't install Ntfs, then we're not going to be able to use that feature, and this is used for other operating systems. This is used for Linux computers to connect to the share, I believe, but we're just using Smb right now, which is server message block for our Windows PCs. So now we have our Smb settings. Add the description if you want. Click this advanced setting. You can say maximum allowed or allow this number of users. Look at the caching information. So I'm going to say, you know what, let's actually only allow 5 users to access this share. Smb permissions, allow users and groups have only read access, or pardon me, all users have read-only access. Administrators have full control. All of the users have read-only. Administrators have full control. All of the users only have read-only and write. Users and groups have custom permissions. So once again, we're going to the custom option, and we're going to say everybody is, or pardon me, we're just going to say everybody has no permissions here. So we're going to say add, and once again we're going to say Joey, and we're going to check names. Say okay, so now Joey, he has read like he did before, and then we'll add administrators, check names. So that's our group. The administrators group has full control, so apply that. And the reason we had to select Joey to have read permissions is because if your Ntfs permissions do not match your Smb permissions, then it won't work. So Ntfs permissions are local permissions. That means if Joey logged into this server 2008 image right now and wanted to access that share, then he'd only be able to do what we allowed him with the Ntfs permissions. But if we give him Smb permissions that have full control, well, he theoretically would be able to have full control, but because the Ntf permissions say otherwise, then he will not. So we're just going to leave it at read only. So we're trying to make it so that things match here, if you understand what I'm saying. So we'll apply, hit OK, hit next. We're not going to be publishing this to a DFS namespace. Those are all of our permissions, and we created our share. So here, if we wanted to, we could go properties, check the permissions, mess around with the share or Ntfs permissions to make sure things line up. We could change these advanced settings, remember, to allow the different user limit. Or on the side here, we could stop sharing and do all this other stuff. But another thing is kind of want to look at here is manage sessions. Right now, if we had users who were connected to this share, then we'd be able to see it under our manage sessions. And we could also do the manage open files, which does the similar thing. It sort of sounds exactly like what it is. You're able to see which users are accessing which file. So now that we've kind of quickly covered that, I want to move over back to the server roles. So in here we have our features, and it says group policy management, and group policy management is a feature that gets installed with Active Directory. So right here we see that, but if we want to actually go into the area where we manage that, we have to come to our administrative tools and say group policy management. Now under here we have our domains, we have our cyber defense domain, and we have our default domain policy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, I'm going to go to the settings, and we can see right here what are the default settings being applied to anybody who joins our domain. So right now, anybody who joins our domain has a password history of 24 passwords, remember. They have a password age of 42 days, a minimum password age of 1 day, a minimum password length of 7 characters, and the password must meet complexity requirements, and the passwords are not stored using reversible encryption. And now our account lockout threshold, our account Kerberos policies, and our local security policies, and everything of that sort. So if we actually want to sort of mess around with this, then what we'd have to do is we'd have to create a new GPO in this domain and link it to this domain. So let's just call this one drive map, and we can go ahead and click edit on this. So let's go to policies, or rather preferences. Let's go Windows settings, drive maps, and let's go new map drive. So our action is going to be to update it. Our location is going to be /192.168.1.20, so that's our server, and that's going to be to the shared drive. And we're going to label that drive as shared, and we're going to use the S drive. We're going to connect, or well, we'll just leave default. We could say who we want the user to connect as right here, but I'm just going to leave it as whichever user is connecting, they're going to be connecting as themselves. So before, what we did on this shared drive when we created it was we made it so that only the administrators and Joey have permission to it, but if we had another user named Anne, for instance, and Anne wanted to be able to connect to this drive, well, she wouldn't be able to because she doesn't have the permissions. But if we told her to connect as Joey, then she would be able to get it. So we're going to hit OK, and there we have our S drive. And now if we log in with Joey, he should be able to get this map drive. So that means we're going to have to open our Windows 7 virtual machine and connect as Joey to see if he's getting his map drive. Alright, so this is our moment of truth here. We just logged into our Windows 7 test machine as our user Joey. So now it's taking a second to load there. We'll hit start. And we're waiting for my computer to highlight there. Waiting, waiting, waiting. And Joey actually doesn't have the drive here. So now, why doesn't Joey have the drive here? We created the account settings, we created the Ntfs and the Smb permissions so that Joey had access to the shared drive, and we created our drive map with our group policy object. But Joey actually isn't getting it. And there's a simple answer to that, and that's because at which point did we ever tell that, or did we ever tell our server to give Joey that share? We gave him permissions, but we didn't say that he needed to access it. So we need to go back to our share here, or pardon me, our group policy object. And on this drive map here, because we have our default domain policy and we have our drive map policy, close that, sorry. This is our drive map, so it's sharing it. These are the settings, but we need to actually go to the delegation. And we need to add, we need to hit the add button down here, and we need to say Joey. So we check name, Joey's there, we hit apply, and Joey only needs read permissions because he's not editing the settings, he's reading from this group policy to get those settings. So we'll apply that, and you can add multiple users and multiple groups here, but remember, one thing you never ever do is delete the authenticated users. If you delete authenticated users, this isn't going to work. So always have that there, make sure it has read from security filtering. But now this means we have to go back to our Windows 7 machine, log off, and we're going to have to log back onto the domain and see if we get anything different this time. Alright, so we just logged on to our domain again. Hit start, my computer, and there we have it, our shared drive from our Server 2008 machine. So if we double click on it, we see that the folder is empty because we actually haven't created anything in there yet. but let's just make a text document. And it says we need permission to perform this action. And as you remember from earlier, when we were signing our Ntfs and our Smb permissions, we only ever gave Joey read access to this drive. So we come back to our Server 2008 image here. I'm going to open the file in shared. I'm going to say new text document. We're going to name this one Joey. Open it up. Hey Joey, how's it going? And we'll save that, close it, and let's come back over to our Windows 7 machine. We see that Joey's appeared there. We open it. Hey Joey, how's it going? We enter. Not bad. Control S. Save it. Already exists. Want to replace it. Access is denied because we do not have writing permissions to this drive. So don't save. All we have is read access right now. If we want to mess around with all the Smb and Ntfs permissions, then we could to give them access. But for right now, the general idea of here is security. If you have shares on your computer, if you have shares on your server, or any desktop computer for that matter, you want to make sure that permissions are being applied accordingly. So if one user only needs read access to this drive, then they should only have read access and nothing more. So with that in mind, if you're ever going through a scenario where user A needs access to this file and that file, but they don't need access to this folder, then make sure that the permissions are applied accordingly. So that is it for this video. Next video we'll be talking more about group policy.